What's happening, everybody? I'm Joey Powell here for Inside Carolina for a new episode of the 40 Club. We haven't done one of these in a while, and I can't think of a better guest to have than the gentleman that's joining me tonight. He's the kind of guy who used to ruin Saturdays for quarterbacks, and now he's out here ruining excuses for not giving back to the community. He's a Tar Heel legend, an NFL Comeback Player of the Year in 06 or 07, a Pro Bowler, former first-round pick, and somehow the guy's still underrated. He racked up nearly 100 sacks in the league, survived over a decade in Jerry World, and once coached college football without losing his mind, which might be the most impressive thing he's done yet. He's produced some faith-based films, led mental health initiatives in Dallas, and oh yeah, he used to hold the all-time sack record in North Carolina. Y'all, if you don't know Greg Ellis, you're about to. But if you do know Greg Ellis, well, buckle up. We're about to have some fun because we're going to talk football, leadership, legacy, and probably why the D-line is still not getting enough love. Greg Ellis, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Joey, man. I sure so much appreciate you having me on. Joey, I got one correction for you, but far as I know, I still have the sack record, career sack record for Carolina.
All right. Well, look, we're going to ride with it then. And if you don't know, if they haven't called you and told you that you don't hold the record anymore, then we're going to ride with that. And speaking of telling you about some news, apparently I broke some news to Greg before we started today. But my man, old number 87, is on the ballot for the 2026 National Football Foundation College Football Hall of Fame. And I'm honored to be talking to you, Greg. I think it's probably highly and long overdue. But just share with us how you feel having heard that news here just before we started recording.
Well, I'll tell you this, Joey. Wherever you air this particular program that you're recording right now, I think your ratings are going to be high because this is the first time I've heard about. Now, I don't have the best memory, but for as my recollection, this is the first time right here on your show by Joey telling me that I am on the ballot for the Hall of Fame for college football. So I thank you for breaking the news to me. I promise you, nobody, for as my recollection, nobody told, unless it just zoomed in and zoomed out of my head. But man, dude, that is amazing, man. Such a blessing. Now I want to make sure I make it, of course. But being on the ballot is an accomplishment in itself. Just like, a couple of months ago when I was blessed to go into 2 months ago, the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. It's one of those awards, man. And, one name gets called out, which is your name, but it is truly a team, a coach, so many people, has a part in winning awards like that, being honored at the end of one's career. A lot of people had their hands in helping that to happen. So to everybody that played any part in helping Greg Ellis along the way, coaches, teammates, of course, my mom, dad, brother, and above all of them, my wife, because we've been dating since high school. Keep my kids, everybody, man, that has some part, some bigger than others, but some part to play in accomplishing awards like this.
I'm curious now to see what kind of impressions we get out in Wendell and Knightdale, since we've got the de facto mayor of East Wake coming on to join us tonight. Greg, I want to ask you. Let's start with a little bit about kind of just your football legacy and how you were tied in North Carolina. When you look back at your time in Chapel Hill, what part of that experience do you feel like still shows up in your life today in 2025?
Man, toughness. When I got to college, I wasn't the most toughest football player in the world. Resilient, I learned that, coming up. But understanding that, you had to fight through some stuff, mainly injuries, to be honest with you. I remember probably my second year in college, and we were in the spring game, I think. And maybe it was a real game. I don't know. I dislocated one of my fingers, and man, you would thought that I was having a baby. And one of the trainers, came over and put it back in place. And my Coach Donnie Thompson, he said, "Okay, you ready to go back in there?" And I'm like, go back in. I'm like, did you not see my finger? It's like, dude, I don't know. No, I'm not ready to go back in. I go from that to, I remember playing my last year of pro football with the Raiders. It was the Raiders. And we were playing San Francisco. And I dislocated my finger and couldn't get out of the game in time. And I remember pulling it and putting it back in place myself. And I reflected back to the first time I dislocated a finger, I'm ready to end the whole practice or the game, and to now putting it back in place and playing another play before I go out of the game. So, so I learned that at Carroll, and there's several other things, but that's certainly one that I learned that helped me to have a football career.
So, old head Greg, you don't have like the Ronnie Lott thing going on, do you? With the
look, I didn't cut it off, but you can kind of see how this one looks right here.
Yeah.
So I didn't go as far as Ronnie did by amputating the finger. I wasn't going to do that, but I got a couple of this kind of messed up here, as you can see. So old war wounds, if you would.
I love that story. You were a dominant part of a couple of defenses in North Carolina. I want to ask you, what do you feel like the biggest misconception about those Mack Brown teams is?
Man, you know what? I think we erased that softness that people associated with Mack Brown football teams. I really think we did. A lot of people would say about Coach Brown, well, he's a good recruiter. And kind of an okay coach. He just surrounds himself with good coaches. And you always want to surround yourself with good coaches. But I think Mack Brown is actually a good football coach. We came close to winning the national title at Carolina. He go ahead and win one for the University of Texas, of course. But I think, we answered that and erased that negative stereotype about him not having tough football teams and tough football players. I think we helped erase that when we were playing there.
I don't know how anybody could have had Mad Dog as your strength coach and not been tough. Do you have any good weight room stories from your times with Mad Dog? And maybe it's not in the weight room, maybe it's on the field and everybody's puking their guts out. But give me a good Mad Dog story.
We all. Mad Dog is not coaching anymore, so I'm probably safe because some of them, may be a little, may be censored for airing, if you would. But his mentality, man, brought a level of toughness and maturity. To this day, we and Mad Dog is included on our group text that we have, and so the mentality, and I often tell them, the mentality that he instilled in us. Literally transformed us from boys to men, if you would, and understanding the importance of what it takes to be a man. I think Coach Dog, Mad Dog, had a huge part in developing myself and several other young men. But yeah, brother, we had story after story after story with Mad Dog. But he loved us and still do love us. But yeah, I don't know if I can get into the storytelling.
That's fair. I don't want to put anybody on Front Street here. It's okay.
Yeah. Had some tough days with old Mad Dog.
So, and I don't know any of your former teammates or other guys that played under him that don't have a similar response. That's why I always like to ask it when I talk to guys from your era. Let's switch gears a little bit about football. If NIL had been around in your era, how rich would Greg Ellis be right now?
Oh man. Whew. Right, it'll be a different ball game, man. And when you look at the amount of money that some of these college kids are getting, I'm for them getting some compensation because it's. I'm sorry, I was looking at something. It's a tough game, and here's the thing: you don't get the time to work another job, right? Because football, college is a job in itself, in college, and so you don't get a chance to work. And so, there's a story about Chris Webber, if you would. And Chris said, I don't know Chris personally, but I heard the story that he was walking down the street and he saw his jersey for sale in a store when he was in college. And he said, man, they're selling my jersey for $79.99. and I can't even afford a piece of pizza right now. And so everybody has to agree that there is something wrong with that story. Without Chris, playing basketball at the level that he played, that jersey number 4 would not be worth $79.99. And so if he put all the work in to make that jersey cost $79.99 and be worth it, where people were buying it by the thousands, surely it's unacceptable for that person, for that young man at the time, Chris Webber, to be walking around, can't afford to buy a piece of pizza. That's ridiculous. And I think colleges, something needed to happen to solve that problem. But where we're at right now, I'm not sure if that's the best solution. But it's the nature of the beast, and it is a solution. But I'm not sure if it's the best solution.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is it fair to say, do you feel like maybe the pendulum has swung too far to the other side?
Yeah, I do. And again, I don't want any of the young people, athletes, I should say, thinking,
Sure.
okay, here's another old man who's
Sure.
disgruntled because he wasn't getting paid when he was in college and all that stuff. I promise you, I'm not. I want them to get their money. If money is there for them, I want all of them to get as much money as they can. But I think the direction we're going now is obviously uncharted waters, because it has never been done before. And where do we land up at? I don't think anybody truly knows. And so again, I'm for them getting some compensation. But like I said, I'm never for a person not getting the money that's available for them. But we have to understand the dynamics that comes along and the responsibility that comes along. Because here's the thing, I'll speak for myself, and I know this goes across the board, but several athletes, football players, let's talk about football players, come from poverty or below the poverty mark, if you would. And so when you take that, and now, you a year later, here you are, you're getting $500,000 a year, or even $1 million a year, or even more than that. That puts you into the high tax bracket.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just easy math. You get $1 million, that 1 year. Well, 38% of that goes to the federal government. And so now you're and let alone the state taxes that have to come out of that, right?
Yeah.
And so now you're working with about 45% of that is gone to taxes, right? And so you're stuck with 55% of that. Now, an individual, a young man that we're talking about football, he may get that money and go buy a house and go buy a car and do all these things and spent, $800,000 and thinking, okay, I got $200,000 left. It's like, no, actually you don't. Now you are what they call in debt. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't know that when I was coming out of high school.
At 20 or 21, yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with it when you're talking about that kind of money, if you would. And then the, real immaturity that kids have, it's natural, right? It's not anything I'm saying bad about people or young people, but, as you get older, you should get more mature. So, yeah, it's uncharted waters, and we just have to be careful about it, not to allow the kids to get themselves in trouble before they really get started in life.
Yeah, that's some good insight. I think one of the tough things, and one of the things that most people got behind originally was, can there be some sort of education for these young men?
Mhm.
And can there be some sort of way that they understand, hey, you see a million that line, but your take home, as you just referenced, Greg, is somewhere around, 55 or 550,000. And don't
Mhm.
go spend that $1 million, because the government's going to get theirs. You know that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's move on to your NFL career a little bit. You had some longevity in a
Mhm.
brutal league at a really tough position.
Yeah.
What do you credit for sticking around as long as you did? I mean, I mentioned the comeback player of the year thing, especially in Achilles. That is not an easy injury, even as we sit here today in 2025. What do you think led to you having such a long and productive career?
Well, first, I really thank God for it. I went through a lot of adversity for his injuries, psychological tests that went on in my career. And so I definitely credit God first for blessing me and allowing me to have the opportunity to play 12 years, of course. But for as what, I contribute, proper rest, that helps a lot. Taking care of your body, no alcohol. I mean, a lot of guys drink alcohol, but please, be smart and don't overindulge in alcohol, smoking of anything, drugs of any type. I just did the best that I can do for us taking care of my body, if you would. I actually didn't do a lot of supplements. I minimized any kind of pain pills or medicines as much as possible. And I throw the much as possible because I had to take stuff to allow me to play, obviously. But just taking care of your body best you can. As the old saying goes, you can't burn the candle by both ends, if you would, because if you do, it's going to burn out quicker. And so just make sure you're burning it on one end. You can't hang out all night. You shouldn't be coming from the club and coming from the club going right into the field house. I know some guys who used to do that, but that harms your career. And even if guys do it and say, well, man, I was very successful and I was that guy that hung out all the time. And I would say to that person, imagine if you didn't hang out all the time. Imagine if you wasn't excessively drinking or constantly staying out all night and coming right into practice. Imagine if you didn't do those things, how much better you would have been without that. So taking care of your body is a huge part of that.
It's also become a billion-dollar industry. If you see, all these guys now, like part of their teams have it as part of, their taking care of their investment. But now you also see guys going outside of the training room and finding special people to take care of their body, whether it's nutritionists or cryotherapists or you name it. There's just so many things that are keeping guys playing longer. And I think you were probably on the front end of that.
Yeah.
What was there a moment in the league where you felt like, okay, I belong here? Or did you always feel like it was kind of survival mode for you?
Well, to me, you got to stay in survival mode. Now, there's a threshold as a young player to say, okay, I can do this. Meaning, because you're going into a locker room like me. When I got to Dallas, I'm looking at Michael Irvin, I'm looking at Emmitt Smith, I'm looking at Troy Aikman, I'm looking at Leon Lett. So there were some legends, Hall of Fame guys, Deion Sanders, who were there, right? And I'm like, man, I remember being in high school watching Dallas win Super Bowls. And these are the core guys who were a part of those teams. And now all of a sudden you're teammates with them. And so there is a threshold that you have to cross to say, okay, I can do this, right? And then once that threshold is crossed, to me, you still have to stay hungry because if not, you got the next crop of guys that's coming in trying to replace you. So you got to make sure you stand on your grind about it if you want to have a chance to have a long career.
So I think there's a couple of, I don't know, the way that your position has been used. I think this is the way I want to say this. The way your position has been used in just the traditional pass rusher. Do you feel like the position has changed, or do you think it's just been rebranded and it's still the same as it was when you played?
Well, it was changing some while I was playing, and it has went a lot farther now, if you would. And I say that meaning that hybrid position, I remember coming out of, my senior year of college, and I was probably weighing about 255. And so the question mark was on me, okay, is he a linebacker or is he a defensive end? As you know, I played defensive end in college, but a lot of the pro guys felt like, okay, at 255, that's not defensive end that we are accustomed to. And so, and I remember people telling me that. And so that senior year, man, I started gaining weight because, I was a defensive end and I wanted them to know that. But now, you look at some of these edge guys, it's okay to be 250, right? 255. It's even okay to be 245 and do it. So the scheme creators, the coaches, when I say scheme creators, coordinators, defensive coordinators, and offensive coordinators too, have are better now understanding the importance of sacking the quarterback, right? And so we may forfeit some I don't want to use soundness of the defense in order to put guys in a better position to sack the quarterback, because what you do as a defensive coordinator is you realize I have a unique guy that can rush the passer. So I don't want to tie him up dealing with 350-pound offensive tackles all day long. So let's widen them out and let them rush. And then people say, well, what about him playing the run? Well, I got some linebackers that are not my best pass rushers. And so let's throw a little bit more on their plate. And again, it's all a team game. But the important thing about it is there's no play that impacts the game more than sacking a quarterback. And people say, why do you say that? Because if we can disrupt your quarterback, that affects how he's going to pass for the rest of the game. If he's back there seeing ghosts, thinking, somebody's about to take his head off, well, now the accuracy of that quarterback becomes erratic, right? And so now you got guys stepping up, making more interceptions because the quarterback is kind of, bobbing and weaving, watching out for his own life. And so understanding the importance, the impact that it has when you can hit the quarterback, man, is major. And I think more coaches, understand the importance of that.
Yeah, it's somewhere around in the 80s. But if you get a sack on the quarterback during a possession, there's like an 83% chance that position's going to end in a punt, and that just gives credence to exactly what you're trying to talk about, Greg. We're talking with Greg Ellis about his career and really just kind of everything that he's lived through, and some amazing experience and perspective here on the 40 Club on InsideCarolina.com. I'm Joey Powell. Greg is on the ballot for the NFF College Football Hall of Fame this year, so we felt like it'd be a good time to talk to him. Moving forward, kind of in life, kind of life after your playing career, Greg, what made you want to step into coaching? Like, you've done the high school and the coaching levels. You've still got young men figuring themselves out. Why would you want to jump into that?
I love it. I love football, man. I had an opportunity to coach when I first retired, and I did a little, but not full time because, I love my family more than football. And so I was gone a lot because of playing football. And so I didn't want to be gone and put in those hours that it takes to coach because my kids were so young. And I said, if God bless me with the opportunity when they get older and I can come back and do it, then I will certainly, take advantage of those opportunities. And thank God it worked out like that. I wish I was able to coach longer with the Cowboys. Didn't work out that way, but I'm sure glad I had the opportunity to coach. It was great. It was great. I enjoyed it, man. Love it. Love football. And even more, it's about the life lessons that you can teach through football. To me, that's the real important part of this thing, is pointing to young men lives, man, helping them the way somebody helped you along the way as well. And so you get the opportunity to pay that forward in another young person's life. And so I enjoy that more than actually football.
So when you're talking to young players now, what's the biggest difference you notice in their mindset or maybe even their motivation from when you played?
I think they're motivated and they want to be good, right? But they now it's a real dynamic question that you asked them when you think about it, because a lot of factors factor into why people now are saying, well, football players are softer than they used to be. The game is softer than it used to be. I see obviously what they're saying. However, another part of that, or another side of that coin, is to understand the rules now are smarter than it used to be. Meaning, I'll be transparent with you. I don't have the best memory, and a lot of that comes from playing football. When I told you're the first person that I remember telling me I'm on the Hall of Fame ballot. That doesn't mean somebody didn't tell me, and I just don't remember it, to be honest with you. And so now there are more things in place to protect players, and that's good. I really do think that's good. And I understand, I'm more old school guy and hate when if you hit the quarterback too hard and they want to throw the flag. I'm like, where do you want him to hit them at? You know what I mean? If you hit them too low, they're going to throw the flag. But if you hit them too high, they're going to throw the flag. But I get it. I think it's good for the game. It can be frustrating, but I tell you what, when this new group of guys enter into that retirement, they turn 30, 40, and 50, 60 years old, odds are they won't have some of the issues that, some of us are dealing with to this day. And so I think that is important. And I think that outweighs the vicious blows that you used to be able to get away with, if you would. I think it's good for the game. I think it's good for the investment, meaning the money that owners are investing into these guys. You want to protect that. And so guys can, have longer careers and all the above. So I do think it's good.
You sound a little bit like a teacher, Greg. And I want to ask you, if you walk into a locker room right now and you got, say you walk into the locker room, when Dallas reports and you get a chance to talk to, the whole room, or maybe you just go to rookie camp and you're talking to the rookies. What's the one non-negotiable that you would share with a room of players right now that you would try to get them to understand?
Well, to me, it's about their integrity, right? Have integrity for the game. And that comes with respecting the game, respecting your teammates. But if I had to just kind of, short and sweet, I would say integrity, man. That's something that goes a long way. Have integrity about what you're doing, respect the game, respect your teammates, respect yourself, right? And so, I did a podcast earlier today, and this subject kind of came up, and I told them, I said, there is more responsibility on the players now, and they're like, "What do you mean?" It's like, because the rules don't allow you as a coach to get on guys and to do the kind of things that was done to me, for example. And so those things, they kept you in line, if you would. They kept you striding to be the best that you possibly can be, right? But now that's kind of pulled back some, meaning, we used to do mini camps and OTA practices, with the Cowboys or the Raiders. And, sometimes we didn't have pads on, but we went at a pace that you might as well have pads on. Guys, your body was getting, physically bruised up because you didn't have pads. So it was almost like, Coach, you know what? Let's just put the pads on because y'all still have us practicing out here as if we do have pads on. But see, now that's not the case. When they don't have pads on, man, it's like 3 steps and stop. You know what I mean? And so you as a player, though, you have to be disciplined enough to say, okay, I still have to develop my skills, my technique. All those things still have to happen, because there's one thing that's not going to change, meaning that the owners are investing major dollars in you. And if you're not producing, guess what? You're going to get cut. So you have coaches now and stuff that's there to protect you and don't allow you to really let it all out in practice. But that bar there for productivity, it's still there. So players, you got to be disciplined enough to take it upon yourselves to make sure you're still developing, because if you're not producing, they're going to get you out of there.
Yeah, and they'll find somebody who will.
Definitely.
Talking with Greg Ellis, former North Carolina football great, longtime Dallas Cowboy, All-Pro, you name it. Greg, what's one thing about the business of football that people don't understand, but they absolutely should understand?
They have to understand it. Well, it'll help you to not be mad at the players when it seems like they're being greedy for money. You have a short window of earning power as a football player. And even you may play 12, like me, blessed to play 12 years, but those latter years aren't going to be the biggest paydays for you. That's not your highest earning power. And so we love the game. We want to play as long as we can play until they have to roll us off the field sometimes. But in the middle there somewhere that's where you should, be hitting strides. And that's where your largest earning power is at. And so you want to make sure that, you get what you're supposed to get, because understand this, owners of NFL teams are owners because they made a lot of money doing something. And so they're businessmen, and Businessmen don't get there by, not being good businessmen, if you would. And so their job as owners is to to get you for the cheapest prices possible. And people used to say, man, if you were to play for $1, the owners will let you play for $1. And you are exactly right, because that's business. They're trying to get the best product for the cheapest price, and that's how they became billionaires, and that's how they generally run their teams, if you would. So general public, just ease up off the players, that we're not being greedy. That window is very short for a player.
Mhm.
So don't feel, oh man, he's being greedy, he should play for the love of the game. Think about this. Even if a player is frustrated and say, hey man, it's all about the money. No, it's not all about the money, because all of us have played football. Pretty much all of us have played little league, middle school, high school, and you used to be able to say college. You can't say college now because they do get paid.
Right.
But little league, middle school, and high school, we've played that a lot longer than we're going to play professional football. And you did that, and you wasn't getting a penny to do it, but you still did it to the best of your ability. So you can't tell me, man, I'm just doing this for the money. No, you're not. You love this game.
Well, and flip side of that, I don't know many people that would go into their office and sit at a desk for 8 hours a day for the love of the work, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's kind of the exact same situation
it
that
is.
you hear some fans asking of players. Let's get into some mental health stuff, Greg. I know that you've taken a real passion in your work with the Getting My Help Foundation and that
Mhm.
app. How did you make that transition in looking at what football and our society and the pro game and how they treat mental health? How did you make that transition from seeing that, living that, experiencing that into, where you are now with the Getting My Help Foundation and that app, and doing that work that helps people find the mental help that they need?
Yeah, exactly, man. You know, like I said, in my day of playing, and I sound like a real old man when I say in my day, but that's what it is. The attention to mental health wasn't always paid attention to. Should word it like this: was not always understood the way that
Mm,
it needed to be understood. I remember some coaches, and I won't mention any name, but it was an old way of thinking that actually thought this is true. And not true that what I'm about to say is true, but true in the fact that that was the way some of us thought. And I was one of those people.
right.
Like, you get a concussion, you get hit in the head, and, they notice a difference in your behavior. But the answer to it for some coaches was he just need to get his bell rung again. And when he get hit again, he's going to snap back right. And that's literally how some of us thought. It's like, okay, he got
Uh,
hit, got his bell rung, and you can see something is wrong with him. He's not his normal self, and it's like, well, yeah, he just need to get another hit like that, and it'll put him right back where he needs to be. So that sums it up to everything you just asked, and understanding that where was mental health in how we viewed it in those days compared to how we view it now. It's in a much better atmosphere now than it was then, obviously. And me realizing that, man, as a player, for some reason, I was that guy that, when we had guys on our team that was, dealing with some stuff, and I guess this is something that God had for me to do, if you would, because, I was the guy. I was like, okay, make sure Greg is around, and make sure they talk to Greg. And that's what it was. We had some guys that struggle with some major stuff mentally. And, I was that guy that the team and the coaches depended on to, hey, make sure G is around them, kind of thing. And now you fast forward that button, man. I think it was a calling that God had on my life. And sometimes it takes a while to get there. And God, you look back and you see the pieces that connected. And so it only makes sense that you're doing what you're doing now. And for me, with, what I'm doing with mental health and bringing awareness to it, it only makes sense now. And my wife, she told me, she said, well, Greg, it makes sense for you to have a passion for mental health, because a lot of people that you knew growing up, has a lot of issues. A lot of people, even in my family, had a lot of
mhm.
issues and mental wise. And so she was right. So now, my passion, My purpose right now, and this is where I think God has me to be, is in the mental health arena, in helping people. And I'm so glad to see it manifest. When I say manifest, it's like, we go around different cities doing different events and stuff. And when people open up and share stuff in their life about, how we're helping them and what we're doing, it is just mind blowing for me. I never thought that I would be in this arena to this capacity. And so, but I'm sure glad I am. And I tell people, and I've said to anybody, I'm getting blessed by it more than anybody else, to be honest with you. I've, because I get to talk to a lot of therapists now, to be honest with you, and I'm learning a lot of stuff. I research a lot of stuff now about mental health, and it's just a huge blessing for me, to be honest with you, and very fulfilling for me because I enjoy helping people, and this is major when you're talking about helping people.
Yeah, and count me as one that's on the same side of very much wanting to shake the stigma that, specifically our gender, men have been very
Hmm.
anti mental health, and we just weren't raised thinking that you talking about things or seeking out therapy or seeking out help for your mental issues was normal. And
Hmm.
I love that you're now very much driving the bus of let's turn that around. I'm a
Yeah.
big proponent of therapy and believe that it works. And if you're in front of a room right now and you could think about it as you're talking to a room 20 years ago and they didn't know about mental health, or they didn't know that, hey, what I'm feeling or these things that are happening with me are biologically driven and it's okay to
Mhm.
seek help. What would you say to a room of people like that right now? If you had like just a 1 minute window on a stage, what would you say to them to get them to believe in mental health and get help for their, whatever it is they're struggling with?
Hmm. I would tell them, stop viewing asking for help as a sign of weakness. And like you said, men are notorious for it. I look at this information so many times; it's kind of getting embedded in me. And one thing that stands out, that men are 4 times likely to commit. I don't want to say commit suicide. That's a term that is really not healthy to say. We don't say you committed cancer if you die from cancer. And so men are 4 times likely to die from suicide than women are, right? We make up 50-50 of the population pretty much, but 80% of it, suicide, comes from men, if you would. And so again, if you ask that question, I'm walking to a room full of young men, that's what I say to them. Hey, dude, don't think that you're showing a sign of weakness by asking for help. Stop ignoring it, right? There are a lot of guys, man, that I've been blessed to play with, and they had to view it as a sign of weakness to ask for help, because some of them did not ask for any help and they ended up ending their life.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it, mental health, whether it's teenage girls, teenage boys, adult women, and adult men, the number one thing that prohibits people from getting help is all the same thing. Now, it runs higher in men and in teenage boys than females, but still it's the same thing, and that is the negative stigma about showing weakness if
Yeah.
you ask for help. And so in our app, that's one of the things that it covers. It removes you from having to ask an individual, hey man, I'm dealing with this. Who can I go talk to? With the app, you can follow the steps, click on resources, click on categories, find which one you think you're dealing with, hit your state and your city, hit search, and now you have several different resources that concentrate on that particular disorder that you feel that you're dealing with. And so not one time did you have to go outside of the app to ask the individual, hey, who can I reach out to for help? You can do it in the comfort and privacy of your own home. Even you may not want to let your spouse know yet, right? But you can do it in the privacy of your own home and find help and connect with people that specialize in whatever you're dealing with mentally.
Yeah, I've actually dropped it down here on the bottom of the screen. If anybody's watching this, it's
Yeah.
Getting My Help app. Go to the App Store
Yep.
and search for it. It'll tell you how to do it. It's really easy.
Yep.
I've actually played with the interface. Greg was cool enough to send me the link ahead of time.
Mhm.
Greg Ellis, before we get you out of here, I'm gonna hit you with a couple of real light um, fun closeouts for the show. All right.
Okay.
Best player you ever lined up against?
Best player of Larry Allen.
All right. And you saw him quite a bit, huh?
Yes, in practice.
One moment in your career that you'd relive, not that you would change it, but just that you would want to have again.
Oh man, yeah. I Troy Aikman, and so it was. I don't know what game it was, but anyway, it was one game. I get a interception, run it in for an 87-yard touchdown, and Troy. Everybody's congratulating me and all that stuff. And in the midst of everybody congratulating me, here comes Troy Aikman, and this is my second year with the team.
Right.
He goes, the great Troy Aikman, right? Troy tells me as a young player, he said, "Hey man, make sure you enjoy it, Greg, because it'll probably never happen again for you in your whole career." And I'm like, "Well, you just let the air out of my balloons." Right. And so I'm blessed to get that. Then the very next week, we had 2 home games in a row. We're playing Arizona. And so they're down on the 2-yard line, about to go in to score. They fumble the ball. I get it, pick it up, run it in for a 98-yard touchdown. Now I'm dead tired, dude. But you can guess who I'm looking for.
Right.
I go up and find Troy Aikman, and I said, "Hey, Troy, I thought you said it'd never happen again, right?" And he looked at me with his, sideways smile that he always does, and he just kind of smirked it off. And it took him a while to hit for him to understand what I was talking about, but then he kind of bust out laughing once he put 2 and 2 together. So, yeah, that was something I would love to go back and have happen again.
98 yards is a long way, man. I don't care what anybody says.
Yes.
All right. Last question for Greg Ellis, who is on the National Football Foundation's Hall of Fame ballot for 2026. All right, Greg, build your all-time UNC front 7. I know you're one of them, so who are the other 6 guys that are there?
Yeah, I'm glad you say I'm one of them.
You got to be one of them, all right? So who are the other 6 guys?
So we got me. And then we got 6 more guys to get. I would put Vonnie Holiday. Definitely put Vonnie Holiday. Trying to think of interior guys. Vonnie, Marcus Jones. He didn't have that NFL kind of career, but he was dominating college. So that's 3 of us. Who else would I use at the end? Julius Peppers. So that's the front starting 4. Obviously, Lawrence Taylor. Okay. I would definitely have Brian Simmons. And my other linebacker. Man, I'm trying to think of anybody else. Shoot. I feel comfortable. He didn't have the NFL career, and he wasn't the most polished guy, but when we played, K. Mays was he wasn't the best. He wasn't the fastest athlete like a Brian Simmons, but he would clog up the middle, man.
He was a truck.
Yeah.
And he was built like the traditional old school linebacker too. I mean, chiseled, but had that linebacker build about him.
Exactly.
What's crazy, man, is you played with a lot of these guys. I mean, aside from LT and Pep was a freshman, I think, when you was he there your last year?
So I had recruits.
Behind
he brought him to a basketball game, but I was going out. He was coming in.
Okay, so you missed him just by a little bit, but. And I did check. You are still. We're not going to take it away from you. You are still the all-time sack leader at North Carolina. So not only do we give you some good news, we're not going to take your record away from you.
There you go.
But Greg, I really appreciate it, man. Before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring this show. Johnny T-Shirt was in Chapel Hill when Greg was in town. And I'm sure when Greg comes back, he's going to go buy Johnny T-Shirt. Our premium subscribers know that you get an extra 10% off. They're already amazing prices. Visit them online at johnnytshirt.com. But Greg, obviously everybody listening and watching this show is going to be rooting for you to get in. We're excited to see that you're on that ballot, man. Appreciate you making some time for us here tonight. And hey, next time you're back in Chapel Hill, let us know. We'll always happily have you on the radio show pregame.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
All right, Greg Ellis, I'm Joey Powell. Till next time for Inside Carolina, this has been the 40 Club with Greg Ellis. We'll talk to you very, very soon.